Welcome to today's video, where we've put together a collection of hilarious stories that you might have missed. Whether you're tackling household chores, immersing yourself in gaming adventures, or simply in need of a good hearty laugh, this video is perfect for you. Sit back, relax, and let the laughter begin. If you happen to catch a story you've already heard, don't hesitate to drop timestamps in the comments. To stay up to date with our latest uploads, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Hit that bell icon too so you'll never miss a notification when we release new content. We're committed to bringing you more laughter, so stay tuned for our upcoming videos. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you thoroughly enjoyed this video. Which brand has lost you as a customer? Viewer edition.
Okay, this is absolutely a true story, but years ago, Swanson, the company, they make chicken stock and probably other stuff, but they had a commercial where it was like showing like some chicken soup being made, and the voiceover and the woman in the commercial was just like, "Who makes chicken stock as good as your grandma?" And then the woman just is on screen. She's like, "I do, because I use Swanson chicken stock." Like, she pulled that crap out, and I was furious. Like, I was watching this commercial, and I'm like, "Who do you think you are, you uppity bee? Oh, you don't know my grandma and her amazing soup? How dare you?" And it's the most weird, petty thing. And I know it's a commercial. I know they're not saying bad things about my grandma, but just on principle, I've never bought their products now because I hated that commercial that much. So there's my dumb story. I hope the rest of these are better than that. Story 1. Subway. You might think it's the same reason as in the video, but no. I got food poisoning from a tuna sub. It tasted weird when I ate it, but I'm usually a little fussy about food, so I figured it was probably me. Half an hour later, I was heaving up my stomach and was basically attached to a toilet after that. Called the store the next day, but my goal was simply for them to check the tuna supply, as I thought it might be turning and my sensitive body had caught on to the first hint. Manager completely stonewalled me, denied I had food poisoning. Their store was perfect. I could never have gotten it from there. No, she wouldn't check the tuna. How dare I imply that there was something less than perfect about the tuna? No, I was just a dumb kid who didn't know how the real world worked. I told her I was certain it was food poisoning and that it was from there. "Oh, do you want a voucher or something?" No. Like I said, I wanted you to check the tuna. Literally, she could have lied and said, "Well, I don't think it was us. I will check the tuna anyway," and I would have gone away content. Instead, she lost a customer forever. I later learned it might have been the mayo they mixed the tuna with. I didn't know they mixed in mayo at the time, but the point still stood. All she had to do was say she'd look into it, and I would have left happy. Pity I wasn't aware of all the organizations I could have reported that to. Yeah, folks, I mean, restaurants, things happen, there's food, sometimes there might be some food poisoning, but don't deny it and act like you could never, food poison someone as a restaurant. Apologize, make amends, and take steps to make sure that crap doesn't happen again. We all make mistakes, but if you're going to deny it like that, then I'm going to believe that you will continue making that mistake. Story 2. I remember when I was 19, I went to a Starbucks and got myself a Frappuccino. I drank it and looked at the receipt, and it was like $8. I was like, this isn't even worth it, and laughed at myself for spending what was, at the time, a full hour's paid work for a drink that wasn't even really that big of a deal. It's not like I was a customer in the first place, but it definitely was an experience that gave me no reason to return.
Story 3. I remember the clothes company tried suing my family. Why? Because they lied that we didn't return the clothes we refunded. But we did. I kid you not, instantly, where my family said to the company, "Let's settle this in court then," they instantly said, "No, it's fine. Oh, hey, look, we found the clothes we totally weren't lying about." Story 4. Friendlies served us moldy buns, undercooked chicken, and spoiled lettuce on our chicken sandwiches. That one was open 24 hours and it was very late, so we were the only customers there. They thought we were overreacting when we stood up to leave, and they called the police, accusing us of skipping on our bill. Police showed up, took a look at our food, called the health department, and the place was shut down and never reopened. Now I want to throw up every time we pass a Friendlies.
I'm not even 100% sure what Friendly's is. Like, I've heard of it, but I don't really know that much about the kind of food that they make. But anytime I hear about some of these, like, restaurants that you find, in other parts of the country, I'm always like, ooh, if I'm around that part of the country, I want to try it. But now I read a story like this, and I'm like, now I don't know if I want to try it.
Story 5. I don't remember much of this story personally, just the seething pain whenever I tried to drink, but it has been told by my dad over the years. I was 3, maybe 4 years old at the time, and we went to a dentist for a longer procedure. I was deadly afraid of the dentist, so they decided to do the procedure with me under mild anesthesia, only knocked out for 90 minutes max. Not a big deal. During the procedure, the clamp holding open my mouth slipped and cut open my entire lower lip. Could not drink from a glass or straw without immense pain for a 3-year-old. Now, accidents happen. Would not have been the issue it ended up being, but the dentist was being a total butt about it. She never apologized for the accident and even tried to bill my parents extra for dealing with the aftermath of the accident they caused. All the while, my parents now have to deal with a borderline PTSD-riddled kid who would stab a dentist with a knife before opening his mouth. Thankfully, I grew out of it due to an actual competent dentist. Needless to say, my dad told the dentist to go F themselves and walked out.
Ooh, I have a dentist story. It was not me, but I was in the waiting room and my brother had to go to the dentist, and he was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 at the time, like little kid, same kind of age where it's like, dentist, scary. And my mom was in the room with him, and my little brother was apparently crying, and the dentist, who didn't like the crying kid, even though he was a dentist for kids primarily, just grabbed a rag and stuffed it in my brother's mouth. And what I heard from the lobby was my mother scream at this dentist and threaten to deck him before she came marching out with my brother, grabbing me and just going, "We're never going to this effing dentist again."
Story 6. Okay, so this happened to my aunt and grandmother while I was staying over at their place one night. They called a pizza place to order pizza, can't remember from where, and a couple of secondary items from them. The call went fine. They said we'd have it in 30 to 45 minutes, which was their normal timing for what was ordered and where we were. That time passed, no delivery. My aunt calls them back to confirm the order and see what was taking so long. I do not know what was said during that specific call, but we were apparently told they'd get our order out to us in the next 30 minutes. Time passed, no delivery again. My aunt called them yet again. Something happened with the order or something, so they asked what we wanted again. She reordered, and they said it would be about 30 minutes. Time passed. No delivery yet again. She called them a third time. By this point, they had closed, and they informed her that they'd threw out the order because they couldn't find the place. My aunt asked for a confirmation on the address, and despite having given them her address at least twice, they had gotten the address wrong. They were unwilling to make it right because they had closed, despite the error being completely their own doing. My aunt informed them that they'd lost a customer and hung up on them. She never ordered from them again. That happened in the mid-90s, by the way, and it's still one of the memories that stuck in my mind because even as a kid, I couldn't believe how dumb the whole situation was. Story 7. PetSmart. Long story short, I had a Jack Russell Terrier with a number of digestive and intestinal issues to a point where it could become life-threatening without specific foods and medicines. One particular day, we ran out of his food and had to keep him on a set schedule. Our usual place was already closed, and the only other place that had it was PetSmart. I go in to get some, but they tell me that I can't get it without their prescription program. Not only did I not have enough time for them to process a prescription, but that was also a flat-out lie, and I found that part out a while later. Luckily, our usual place came through for us and let us stop in to get some in time, and a crisis was averted. So not only did PetSmart lie to my face about a can of dog food, but even after I explained the situation to them, they kept up the lie, all for the sake of a few extra bucks, and could have cost my dog his life as a consequence. Ever since then, 6 years on, I have not set foot in a PetSmart again. Story 8. The local Pizza Hut. I used to work there as a cook years ago and was one of the few who followed any rules regarding hygiene, station cleanliness, and product expiration dates. Management only allowed expired product to be thrown out once the health inspector failed the store with 2 pages of infractions related to expired product, cross-contamination, and improper fry practices. The biggest offense was when they saw one of the morning cooks had neglected to sanitize the basket handle and didn't use the safety gloves, contaminating the entire station by checking sauce containers. The idiot was about to go back to the make table without washing their hands when the inspector stopped them. I started tearing into coworkers and riding management's butt every time I saw things like that. I think the only reason my schedule was reduced to 4 hours a week is because I made sure they knew that I know the number for local and state agencies. Ultimately, I quit my job shortly after my stress levels reached the breaking point, leading to me having anxiety attacks. The reason I stuck around long enough for that to happen is simple and stupid. I was in my early 20s, meaning I was complacent, stupid, and stubborn about all the wrong things. Never again have I treated a job as if it were a hill worth dying on.
I mean, the sad thing is, whenever you have these big chain restaurants that primarily staff themselves with teenagers who are paid just the bare minimum that they can get away with, a lot of this kind of stuff kind of gets sidelined. My first couple jobs were at a Hardee's and a McDonald's, 2 fast food, and let me tell you, all the health things that you're supposed to do, that crap did not get done because, most of the employees there were teenagers, and teenagers don't care, especially when you're paying them. At the time, I was making $5.45 an hour. I'm old!
Story 9. There is a greedy, evil store called Lily's, and we went shopping to buy something for Christmas. My grandma bought 2 little heaters that cost $100 each. When we got home, she opened one box to test out the heater. She didn't like it, so we headed back to return the heaters to get our money back. The shop denied refunds and kicked us out like peasants. We spread our warning messages to the people not to shop at Lily's. She lost $200 to that corrupt, soulless company. Story 10. I also had a poor experience with Bank of America. My mother was trying to deposit $500 cash into her account using their ATM at the bank, and instead the machine just swallowed up the money and stopped working. We spent the next 3 hours trying to sort it out with the Bank of America workers, and eventually they told us it'll take 3 weeks for them to give us back our money that they took from us. Absolutely no one should be using Bank of America. Story 11. Not me, but because Olive Garden nearly killed my mom, we never eat there. So my parents went to Olive Garden years ago. When my parents ordered, they told the waiter to not add mushrooms to my mom's food as she is fatally allergic to them. When the food had come, they had mushrooms, so my parents explained that my mom couldn't eat them. The next time around, they bring back the same exact food, only this time they had picked out the mushrooms. My parents still saw bits of shrooms. At that point, my dad was peed, screamed at them for nearly killing my mom, and they left. Story 12. This story is on a much smaller scale since I didn't drop the entire brand, just a specific location under the brand, this being one particular Domino's located near my college buddy's house. I ordered some food for us to pick up by curbside via the Domino's app, and when we got there, the order wasn't ready yet. So we sat and waited while the timer on the app counted down. If they didn't have your order ready by the time the timer reached 0, you were supposed to get your order for free. Once the timer got down to 5 seconds, it stopped, and we got excited because we thought they finally had our order ready, but they didn't come out. And after another minute of waiting, we went into the building to ask what the hell was taking so long with our order. We also tried asking if they were going to give us our order for free since they froze the countdown timer on the app even though they didn't have our order ready, but the idiot at the counter just kept saying, "It's almost ready, just give us a few minutes." B, you already kept us waiting this long. What was the holdup? Thankfully, they finally gave us our order soon after that, but we agreed to never order from that one location ever again. Fortunately, the Domino's location near my house have a much better track record of delivering orders on time, so I still get food from those places.
Hey, I get it, people working at these stores. You're probably swamped with a bunch of work, maybe, and I'm sure that you've had plenty of customers try to find little ways to goof you over with this system. And you get sick of that stuff, and so you don't want to let anyone get away with anything. But when they were clearly in the right, you gotta just admit your fault there. Or maybe maybe they screwed up enough times that they were all getting in trouble for having to give out free pizzas. I don't know the whole story, but I mean, in the end, don't try and goof over some people that just wanted their pizza on time. Come on.
Service members, what is your worst military wife story? Viewer edition.
Well, folks, you got to hear all of the stories about people, military wives, and bad things that happened concerning them, mostly involving cheating. There's so many about cheating. And we asked you what your terrible military wife stories were, and I mean, it's going to be a lot more of that. It's just going to be a lot more of that. I can feel it in my soul. But I hope they're not too bad, and I hope all of you are doing all right. So, let's get to it. Story 1. Content warning. This story does involve self-termination. So if you are sensitive to that, please skip to the time code on screen right here. Editor, put in the time code for the end of this story if you can, and that way you can skip past this one. I had a buddy whose wife cheated on him during our deployment. She knew she was going to lose everything, so she accused him of touching their 4-year-old daughter. One thing led to another. He was arrested, posted bail, was housed in the barracks under guard, but ended up tying sheets around his neck and jumping out the 3rd-floor barracks window, committing self-termination. Turns out she did, in fact, make it all up. When the child was questioned separately from her mother, she said her mom had told her what to say to the police. Absolutely crazy. I wonder just how crappy the police/command must have treated him to make him think he was going to be convicted no matter what. At least that's what I guess his reasoning was for ending his life. I cannot stand people who would make up these kind of lies about someone. I don't care if you think you're going to lose a bunch of money or anything. To falsely accuse someone of touching a child is just awful. And there should be a jail sentence for making up something like that, because that can ruin lives, as it very clearly ruined his. But yeah, I don't have anything great to add. But folks, if you're having thoughts about taking your own life, anything like that, please talk to someone you trust. I genuinely mean that. I've lost folks. I don't want anyone else to. Story 2. Navy veteran. I've got 3. 1. Buddy was sent a tape while still in boot camp of a woman being railed by 5 guys. To punish him for a dirty tape being sent to him in boot camp, they're PTing him while the video plays and he sobs. The guy's all finished and the woman looks at the camera, says his name, and that she wants a divorce. 2. Guy was enlisting at the same place a girl was out processing. She talks him into a quickie wedding. She refuses to relocate to his base. She wants to stay in New York with him funding her lifestyle. She drains his bank account and files paperwork saying that he's being financially abusive. This gets the vast majority of his paycheck diverted to her private account. They go to get divorced, we get deployed. Despite the Soldiers and Sailors Act, which states that court proceedings which require the service member's presence cannot proceed while the service member is deployed, the judge grants the divorce and all marital assets and saddles him with all marital debt. 3. I'm messing around with this girl. I find out that she's married when she tells me that her husband is being stationed on my ship. I cut things off, but try to remain friendly. Fast forward a couple months, and she and her husband announce that she's pregnant. My friend and I all offer our congratulations. We're all smiles and finally ask how far along she is. Girl and husband leave. As soon as the elevator door closes, 4 of us started counting on our fingers. We notice each other and pull the Spider-Man meme. As far as any of us could gather, it wasn't any of ours. Apparently, she had us on a rotation, so none of us found out about the other. So we decide that it's probably your husband's kid and leave it at that. Another couple of months go by, I left the Navy, she has a kid. I don't know if he found out the kid wasn't his, found out about the cheating, or if he just had a psychotic break or what. He kills the kid, he's in prison. She attended every parole hearing he's had to argue against his release. I haven't gotten any further details, but she wants him to rot in prison for the rest of his natural life. Since his initial arrest, and honestly, probably since before his arrest, she's been with yet another friend of mine. Don't know, as he wasn't present when she announced her pregnancy. It's been about 20 years ago now, and we were all around 20 at the time. All right, folks, I don't want to repeat this over a lot of different stories. And, if you've made this mistake, please, I'm not trying to judge you personally in anything, but if you are in the military and you're going to be deployed, please don't get married. Please don't. Don't. First off, you're usually much younger, 19, 20. That's not a great age to be getting married. You're still figuring a lot out about yourself. And B, you're under the stressful situation of being deployed, something that can be potentially very dangerous. And you're not in a great state of mind to be making that kind of commitment. And neither is your partner necessarily. There's so much growing and maturing to do, and it's just an unnecessary stress to put on a relationship. That's not to say that it doesn't work out sometimes. I'm absolutely certain it does, but if you really do love each other, then love waits and is patient for both, for getting married, and it should wait and not involve cheating if you are married. But I don't know. If you are young enough and you're thinking about going into the service and you've got a guy or a gal or a non-binary person that you love and you want to dedicate yourself to, I beg you to hold off. And if you are in love, they should understand. I think it's for the best. That's just my opinion. And you absolutely do what you want. But just be careful, folks. I just wanted to say that at least once during this video.
Story 3. My wife cheated on me a couple hundred times when I was on my second deployment to Afghanistan. When I got back, I found out that she had cheated on me the whole time, and I was like, right, so we're getting divorced. Shortly after the divorce, I slept with her best friend for a week because I was young and brash. And then I found out the best friend had actually helped her cheat on me, so that I slept with the best friend's mom for a week right after that. Story 4. For a cute, wholesome military spouse story, I present my great-grandparents. My great-grandpa was a merchant marine in the U.S. Navy during World War II. Those unaware of what a merchant marine is, they transport cargo during peacetime and transport military equipment, ammunitions, etc. during wartime. My great-grandma was a waitress. A year or two after the war ended, my great-grandpa met my great-grandma at the diner she worked at and promptly told his buddies he was going to marry her or die trying. After a few weeks of asking her, my grandma agreed to go on a date with him. They married soon after, had 4 children, and began a successful business together. Despite my great-grandpa being a foul-mouthed sailor and my great-grandma being a classy, well-spoken Catholic girl, they were happily married for almost 60 years until my great-grandpa passed. He died before I was born, but my great-grandma loved him until the day she died.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I don't know how many, really nice, sweet stories that we're going to get, but that is a pretty wholesome story. And I'm glad that they were in love and got to have all those years together. So it's nice to read something on the positive side. I really do appreciate it.
Story 5. Not a wife story, but a female Marine in my platoon who had been administratively separated once already for what we will call integrity violations was allowed to enlist again. Accused my motor T shop chief of flashing his penis at her in his office. His office was a shipping container with a desk, a light, and a fan at the front of the shop, and the door was always open so everyone could see inside at all times, and he could see out and have a view of the whole shop. No witnesses to corroborate her story, but in the military, you are guilty until you prove your innocence. He spent 6 months in the brig waiting for his court-martial, and when it finally came, several of us acted as material and character witnesses for his defense. We had photo and video evidence of her doing exactly what she accused him of doing because she would crash parties she wasn't invited to and just be as promiscuous as possible. Worst part is that she was married to another Marine who was deployed in Afghanistan. Charges were dropped against my shop chief, and new charges were filed against her for false accusations, adultery, and other crimes of feminine licentious nature. They asked him if he still wanted to re-enlist after letting him out of the brig. He did not. Story 6. There was one guy in my squad who married his high school girlfriend of 5 years right after getting into the Fleet Marine Corps. First combat deployment to Iraq in 2008, no problems. About a year later, our company was deployed on the USS Wasp for a 90-plus day deployment. As we were off the shore of North Carolina by Camp Lejeune, he was trying to call his wife, but the number would not connect. Turns out she took out $50,000 in credit card debt, drained his accounts, about another $30,000, and disappeared. Even her family didn't know where she went or how to contact her. Story 7. Something similar to Story 1 happened to my wife. She was waiting in line at Starbucks on base and some woman turned around, didn't say hi or where are you from or anything normal, just, what's your husband's rank? My wife was dumbfounded and said, hi, my name is blank and I'm from blank. Again, the woman repeated the question and my wife answered, he's a PFC. The lady then said to her, well, my husband is an SSG, so you have to listen and do everything I tell you. My wife had the best response to this lady. I don't have to do crap that you say. You turn around to talk to me, so why don't you turn back and F off? God, I love my wife.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the original video where we got these comments from you all, there was basically just a woman who thought that because her husband was, some superior officer in the military that she had magic power too. And, no, why? Even if, honest to God, if you're just out and about at a Starbucks and you're in the military and you happen to come across your superior officer at the Starbucks and he was just like, hey, let me in line in front of you, I'd be like, no, stay in the line. This isn't the military right now. This is Starbucks and I was here first. Anyone who would wield their power in that kind of way is just kind of a donk.
Story 8. All of these just remind me of the people living on base. Some women couldn't wait for their men to deploy. How about a wholesome story? My mom and dad have been married for nearly 30 years, and each time he had to deploy, Mom would send the biggest care package she could each day. She even bought him gag gifts, such as calendars with half-naked men and women on them. One time she even sent an empty beer keg that contained a blow-up kiddie pool with a palm tree. The troops loved my mom because my dad would share the candy and coffee. The troops even made an alcohol-free tiki bar with all the gifts Mom had sent. Dad is now retired and Mom still gets some gifts, and the troops still remember my mom's care packages. Story 9.
Content warning for Story 9. Unfortunately, this story does involve self-termination. So once again, if you are sensitive to that topic, you might want to go to this time code right here. That'll bring you to the end of this story. And then you can continue on with the video.
My brother's wife cheated on him with his superior officer. He hung himself. She collected $1,000 a month in survivor benefits for I don't even know how long. B invites my family out to dinner a little over a year later to invite us to her commitment ceremony with her new military boyfriend. They weren't getting married because we don't think we need to bring pen and paper into this. Couldn't be the fact that she'd lose her free blood money or anything. What's the weirdest intimate interest a significant other had that you just went with because they were hot? Viewer edition.
Story 1. I once talked to a guy who had the pregnancy kink, and I listened to him go on and on about it, how he'd like to see my belly growing with his baby, etc. I thought it was weird as hell, and it freaked me out. I thought it was just him, that he was the only man crazy enough to be like that towards someone he was just getting to know. I noped out of that quickly. Then a few years later, I met my husband-to-be, and I knew we were going the distance and that this was the one. We were in bed together, not married, but making love, and he suddenly whispered, I want to put a baby inside of you. I want you to give me a baby. I've been thinking of it for a while now. And just like that, that's the story of why I had to hurry up and get married. So apparently this is a thing with some men like it is for some women, as mentioned in the story above. As for me, I do like a bit of rough stuff, control, domination done to me, a little force applied, although I'm definitely not protesting or acting like I don't want it. Why? I think it's a bit primal, a bit animalistic, a bit cavemanish, a sort of take what you want when you want it, manly man thing that drives me crazy. Took me a while to get my husband loosened up about being a gentleman, though. All right, first off, folks, I'm going to say I'm really going to try to be mostly a judgment-free zone here. Everyone's got the thing, and that's fine. I might chuckle and laugh a little bit here and there, I'm sorry, because sometimes things just, I'm not expecting them, and they just strike me as a little funny. Or they're just really not personally for me, and I'm not going to try and completely hide my emotions. But yeah, the just getting to know someone and have them going on about a pregnancy kink seems a little much. So I get that, but hey, I'm glad you and your husband have found a comfortable space to express yourselves. Story 2. My ex was interested in something called belly expansion / inflation, basically using any range of substances and forcing said substances into your intestines until your belly / abdomen begins to appear larger or bloated. Sometimes this can go to some pretty crazy extremes, i.e. looking months pregnant, even doing it on such a regular basis that your intestines get stretched so that you can inflate your belly / abdomen to worryingly large sizes. Walked in on her with a bike pump shoved up her butt, and her belly inflated so much I could see the veins very clearly. Walked out of the room that day, and a day or two later asked her about it and decided she wasn't the one. I mean, I've heard of this mentioned on the community, and I've seen people post art pics of this thing. I didn't think it was a thing that actual people were capable of doing. It sounds potentially dangerous. So folks, if it's something you're into, at least do some research, talk to a doctor, because you should feel free to explore things that are, safe and, not harmful to others or stuff like that. But yeah, this sounds like it could be potentially pretty dangerous.
Story 3. Okay, about Story 6, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being a masochist or into BDSM in a general way. There is neither problem fantasizing about extreme BDSM scenarios. It's more concerning to drag their reluctant partner into such a scenario, even if they're at the non-slapped side, as in BDSM consensuality and good communication are even more crucial than in vanilla intercourse. And in the very particular case of this woman, she needs actual psychological professional help. It's downright some kind of scarification, and she is presenting a physical threat to herself. Story 4. The non-con intimate interest is surprisingly common. I used to have a friends with benefits with it until she dated someone who assumed ignoring the safe word was part of the role play. Unsurprisingly, though, she not only lost the intimate interest, but also turned lesbian. She was bi. We tried getting it once after the event, but I could tell she was uncomfortable, so I stopped. Story 5. She has this kink where she likes to pretend that we aren't dating and she doesn't even know me. We've been keeping it up for years. Whatever makes her happy, I guess. Story 6. My ex was into the whole vampirism thing, biting the neck until blood is spilt and tasting it. She also liked knife/blood play.
This is just one that's a little bit much for me. A little roughness, a little, biting, scratching. That can be fun, sure. But, oh boy, once actual blood is involved and knives and stuff, that kind of gets my skin crawling a little bit. I'm not, and I just, oh boy, diseases, stuff like that. Is everything sterile and safe? Oh boy, I don't know, folks. Be careful.
Story 7. My brief indulgence into the BDSM world in my 20s revealed to me a lot of girls who needed specific things to get off. Everything was consensual, I was careful, and I never broke with my limits. The last girl from that era of my life called it quits when she wanted me to do it with another guy while she got off. I don't swing both ways, so I said it's a hard no. We went our separate ways not too long after with no hard feelings. That was certainly a time in my life. Story 8. Well, I guess it's relatively common, but my ex-girlfriend was extremely kinky. She once had me scratching her back, pretty common thing we did, along with biting, spanking, hair pulling, and choking, and I actually found I enjoyed it all as well. The difference was she couldn't get off until a certain pain threshold was met. I remember one particular time when she was on top riding me, and this is usually when I'd scratch her back. This particular time, she leans forward, begging me to make her bleed. I did it all right. She was in pure ecstasy and had the best I've ever seen her have. I found it pretty bizarre to watch, but I enjoyed it as well. I guess it's not all that weird considering a big intimate interest of mine was spoiling her that got me going, then everything I loved buying her all stupid crap she rarely used. People are strange. Story 9. I think the weirdest thing that I've heard so far was from a female friend like 12 to 15 years ago, where she told me that she likes to be cut with a knife, blood and all included, and she was really cute and gorgeous, and all I could think of was, how did this happen? Seeing her, one could get the idea that she was on the wilder side, but not that wild. Story 10. The most extreme thing my wife and I do is our foot intimate interest, and the fact that we use intercourse as a dopamine release so I can deal with the chronic pain issue as I have.
Sure. We've all like to use a little excuse like, when it actually, it's a better pain reliever than aspirin or Tylenol, so maybe we should just deal with this pain nature's way.
Story 11. Knew someone that dated a guy with a decapitation intimate interest. He would roleplay cutting her head off, and then she'd just have to lie there perfectly still while he did his thing. She had a cheating intimate interest, but not like in a roleplay way. She would actually cheat on him. Their relationship was incredibly toxic, but thankfully they broke up before anything really bad happened. It was a nasty breakup, though. Story 12. My ex liked to fart during intimacy. At first I thought she was just trying to be funny and get a reaction out of me. She later revealed it was an intimate interest. I wasn't really into it, but oddly enough it didn't bother me because her farts actually smelled surprisingly good. Kinda smelled like fruity perfume. I cannot believe that I just said that on the internet.
Okay.
Story 13. I knew a girl who pushed her boyfriend with BDSM stuff. He slowly got used to it, so she'd encourage him to take it further with her. Then he got arrested. He had beat the hell out of her, and she called the cops. After he was convicted, I was not part of the trial in any way. She confided in me that she kept egging him on, telling him to hit her more, hit her harder, etc. Told me it was the best O she ever had, and told me that the whole BDSM thing was originally just a ruse to get real bruises people would notice over time to get him arrested. Turns out she was into someone else who wasn't a cheater, so just going for it was out of the picture, and she was too much of a coward to just break up with him. Figured that, hey, if she just got him arrested, that could end their relationship. The fact that it turned out she actually got off to it was just icing on the cake, as it were. His lawyers managed to get a hold of her texts where she talked to him about hitting her harder and BDSM content that she was looking up to find safe ways to take a beating. Blew away her claims that it was never consensual, so he got acquitted, thankfully. I, on the other hand, told the guy she was into about what she did after she was ready for him to make a pass at her, so he'd know the crap show he was walking into and cut her out of my life entirely. Effing psycho. Closest thing I have to offer for a story on this subject matter, all of my more questionable kinks, I tend to feel they work better in Fantasyland than reality, and without specifics, it isn't wrong to say that they can not only be easily be dialed up to extremes, but often are, so they can go from hot to I'm not so sure to what the hell are you doing, or just nasty way too fast. So I'm content to be much more vanilla in real life. Because of that, I really got nothing for this one. Actually, I know of one more weird kink, but the people were just acquaintances, so I don't know if anything ever came of it. Lesbian couple, neither ever with a guy in any way. Not bisexual in the slightest, but one of them had a kink I was convinced was made up before encountering it in the wild. With rare exceptions, she didn't like men, didn't trust men, found men physically repulsive, etc. Not just a lesbian, but within spitting distance of not just man-hatred, but the kind of extreme man-hatred, and considers all heterosexual intercourse to be a form of R. And what she really wanted to experience was for her girlfriend to find the right guy, someone she trusted, who would do the deed without taking things too far, to snatch her up / break into their apartment and R her. She explicitly wanted to start as a real R, or real for her, as she said, whatever that means, only for her to realize at some point that her girlfriend was watching and fingering herself, at which point she'd know she was safe and just give herself up to being used brutally. She envisioned she'd get the best O of her life from this experience. Worried, I talked to her girlfriend about it later, who just told me, I know about her kinks, but you don't have to worry, I won't ever do that to her. Also comforted me by saying if she told you about it, you don't have to worry because it means she wouldn't have wanted me to pick you. Explained that what she meant by that was that I was one of the rare guys her girlfriend liked as a friend, and she knew I'd never do something like that. So I was just a confidant in a drunken moment and not being propositioned for a creepy experience. So that's good, I suppose. They moved out a few months later, and I never saw/heard from them again.
All right, folks. I know, thankfully, after the last video, there were comments, and even comments we've had here that talk about how when you're getting into, like, BDSM and stuff that involves, pain and those kind of things, trust and consent are so, so, so important. And I do know that people like to experiment with, there's that last story about, like, the idea of kind of an assault kink. And I think, I'm not a therapist, I don't know for sure, but I think it can be okay exploring and expressing that. But boy, having a partner like, oh, I want it sprung on me and I don't want to know that this is something we're doing until it's happened, that feels so dangerous. So I just really do be careful when you're exploring these things that can be physically or mentally dangerous. You really, really, really need just open, honest communication at all times, and maybe sometimes check in with someone professional.
What's the worst thing someone tried to correct you about something you're specialized at? Viewer edition.
Story 1. I grew up in Germany and lived there for 10 years, so obviously I learned to speak German. It's one of my first languages, and I am fluent in it. Well, a few years ago, me and my family moved back to Ireland since most of our family lives here. I started secondary school, and I had to choose a language to study. Obviously, I chose German since I'm already fluent, and it would get me easy points in the Leaving Cert. Well, my German teacher was an absolute B. She was rude and disrespectful towards everyone in the class constantly, and the worst part was that she couldn't even speak proper German. I know there's different dialects and accents, but this woman would absolutely butcher pronunciations and skip words or get them jumbled up. I didn't tell her I spoke German at first, and she once tried to correct me. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I don't know how y'all say it in Ireland, but that's how we pronounce it in Germany." She looked at me in shock and said, "Oh, so you've been to Germany before?" as if trying to catch me out. I just replied, "Yeah, I lived there for 10 years. Never tried to correct me again after that." All I can imagine when I'm thinking of this teacher in my head is this woman coming in and being like, "Guten Tag, class. Ich heiße Peggy Hale." I mean, if that's not who she was, don't tell me. I need to believe this. Story 2. Was in 6th grade, had an uncle who was left-handed and told me only 10% of people are left-handed. Repeated this in class to a few friends, one of whom was left-handed, and he confirmed he'd heard that number too. Teacher overheard and told us we were wrong, that it was 50%, and demonstrated it by asking the left-handed kids to raise their hands. Out of 30 kids, only 2 raised their hands. He insisted the sample size just wasn't big enough. Teachers, learn to just admit when you're wrong. I don't know why I'm singing, but maybe this song will teach you humility, which will help you connect with the kiddies.
Story 3. I was diagnosed with celiac as a baby back in the 70s when nobody knew what celiac or gluten-free was. Basically spent my entire childhood explaining to adults, no, I can't eat that. Yes, it does have gluten in it. Yes, I'm sure. As you might imagine, I was a lot of fun at all the birthday parties with pizza and cake. Thankfully, the recent gluten-free fad means most people are aware of it now. Story 4. I had a history teacher in 8th grade ask us, what does AD stand for? I raised my hand, he called on me, and I said, Anno Domini, to which he responded, well, tell us what it actually stands for. I repeated myself, and then he told the whole class it actually stood for after death. Someone in the class looked up what the proper meaning was, and to the teacher's surprise, I was right. The teacher didn't call on me in class for at least a month. Story 5. I remember a woman told me I was wrong about my own scar and medical condition. I was born with gastroschisis, a condition where my stomach wasn't fully developed and so my guts were just hanging out. She claimed that doesn't exist, and I actually got my scar from the doctors when they cut me open giving my mom a C-section. Let me preface by saying I was not talking to this woman. I was talking on the phone to a friend quietly in the waiting room for my yearly physical. I told my friend I'd call her back and told this woman that she was absolutely delusional and that I didn't ask for her effing opinion. Still the most jaw-dropping interaction of my entire life.
Look, I'm sorry, but complete strangers without any sort of real medical training or specialization in certain fields are way smarter about your medical conditions than you or the doctors who have told you all the information that you know. It's so obvious.
Story 6. My father is a tattoo artist and is teaching me. He was cleaning up his station after a client's tattoo, and I swear to God, the person they came with to also get a tattoo had the audacity to ask, "You could have just used the same needle and ink for both of us." I had to just sit there and stare at this person for a moment. My dad glanced at me, then explained that no, you can't use the same needle and ink for two different people. I had to rub my eyes because the statement hurt my brain. Story 7. Someone told my mom it was her fault getting vaccinations that led to my autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. I had to do the research and just look at family history to prove to her she did nothing wrong and what I had was a genetic condition, most likely from my dad who got it from his mom. Me and Grandma were so much alike. She still feels bad she didn't know about it. I tell her nobody really knew about it and some people still don't. Story 8. I have spent near 2 decades studying history, theology, ancient literature, and mythology. About 10 years ago, when I'd only been studying it for a whole decade, my brother, who has not studied those things, got into a long, protracted argument with me about what Ragnarok was in Norse mythology. Basically, he asked me if I knew what Ragnarok was, and I offhandedly said, sure, it's the end of the world in Norse mythology. Why? And he started laughing and calling me a buffoon for getting it wrong. He was convinced it was the name of a dragon in the Norse mythos instead. I Googled it and showed him the definition of Ragnarok on my phone, and he started exclaiming over and over that it was also the name of a dragon. I told him no, that there are only 3 named possibly dragons in Norse mythology, and those were Jormungandr, Njörgr, and Fafnir. He got really mad and started yelling that Ragnarok was also the name of a dragon some more, to which I asked, have you read the Eddas at all? Because I have, a few times. He stormed off after that. I found out later that he decided that Ragnarok must be the name of a dragon because there's a vaguely dragon-shaped airship named Ragnarok in Final Fantasy VIII. Apparently, a 20-year-old video game has more authority on the subject than the guy who's actually read and studied the books. And, oh yes, we were adults at the time. While he was tantruming and screaming over and over again that Ragnarok was a dragon, he was in his mid to late 20s, married, and had a kid on the way.
Look, I know that I got probably some of those Norse pronunciations wrong. I feel like I got Jormungandr right, Njörgr, and Fafnir. Maybe, maybe not. Roll of the dice. I tried to look some of them up, and then I tried to remember them as I was reading it, and you know what? We landed where we landed, but at least I feel like I got Ragnarok right, so, there's that. Also, I remember Ragnarok in Final Fantasy VIII. That game was weird.
Story 9. As a titterpig game master with 6+ years of experience and overall really positive player feedback, it was pretty funny when one guy running his first half-butted improv campaign tried to advise me on various aspects of running a campaign. Mostly to the toxic tune of, you need to be more in control. The campaign is your stories that the players are experiencing. Players will ruin your campaign story if you don't enforce strict limits. You need to have in-game penalties if someone's late from a game or misses a game, etc. The guy also regularly nitpicked and whined about Matt Mercer and Matt Colville as if he held some seniority over those two absolutely lovable titans of the field. His campaign slowly imploded as his players moved over to my various campaigns one by one as they got fed up with his bad behavior and story vision railroading. Good times.
My dear commenter, as a game master of 20 plus years experience, let me say I 100% agree with you, and this friend of yours sounds like a couple game masters that I've had to play with, and it's not great. I mean, you could always check out my channel, The Dungeon Noobs Guy, to find out more about my game playing stuff, but, I'm sure you all probably know about that.
Story 10. I'm a huge herpetology enthusiast and have been raising and rescuing reptiles for almost 20 years now. My husband once tried to mansplain to me how to take care of my own lizards. I just stared at him with this big blank smile on my face until he realized what he did. Story 11. I have the exact opposite of Norway's flat story. I live in Finland, and someone argued with me that we must have beautiful mountains because Norway has a lot of them and the Nordics are all basically the same. I also get people arguing with me a lot when I say I'm not Scandinavian, I'm Finnish. Usually creepy guys being like, Scandinavian girls are so hot, etc., etc. Well, hope you find one since I'm not Scandinavian because Finland is not in Scandinavia any more than Iceland. Story 12. I once did a report on the state of Alaska in grade school. My second cousin, who's younger than me and was at a lower grade level than me, tried to tell me that Alaska is frozen all the time, even in the summer. Now, I don't remember too much about what I researched, but what I do remember is that in the summer, the sun never fully sets and is even referred to as the land of the midnight sun, which of course is not very ice-friendly. She didn't believe me when I told her that, even though I'm the one who was assigned to report and did the research.
Look, when it comes to places that aren't where I live, I only learn the broadest of stereotypes about them, and that's just the way it is. If I go to, Norway, it's full of Vikings. If I go to Alaska, it's got ice and polar bears. If I go to, I would make a joke, but a lot of them I feel like might be pretty insensitive, so we're just gonna leave it at that. Folks, learn about other countries and states.
Story 13. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2012. When explaining to someone that my MS causes me to be immunocompromised, they tried to argue with me. Apparently, the fact that their aunt has MS means they know more about it than me, someone who actually has it. Their argument? It has something to do with the brain. And that was it. That's all they knew about MS, and they thought it was more than what I know about an incurable illness I've had for over a decade. They weren't interested in hearing my response. They really thought that they just owned me with their knowledge. It does pertain to the brain, but that doesn't negate how it compromises the immune system. Story 14. When I was younger, there was this other girl that loved animals just as much as I did. We were pretty close, in fact, and she knew quite a lot for someone our age. But I am a child on the spectrum whose special interest is the entirety of the animal kingdom, and I had been reading books about zoology and animal classification since I was 9. I'm 14 now, by the way. For some reason that day we were on the topic of flamingos. We were in year 6, by the way, so around 10 or 11, though we both had iPhones. She had tried to tell me that flamingos cannot fly. As a child, I hated unnecessary human interaction for obvious reasons, especially if I could have been in the wrong, but I knew that I was completely and entirely correct, so I confidently went up to the teacher, expecting her to take my side, and instead she also informed me that flamingos can't fly. Went home that day slightly upset and searched it up to double check. Turns out flamingos can in fact fly, though regrettably I never brung it up again and corrected the two. What is an open secret in your profession that we regular folk don't know or generally aren't allowed to be told about? Viewer edition.
Story 1. As someone who used to work at a water park, I can 100% confirm that scoop out the chunks is what is done. Any pool connected to the same filtration system as the contaminated one is also closed off for about 40 minutes while the filters clean the water. This also includes slides. If a water park slide is temporarily closed, there's a chance that it shares a filter with a poop pool. I honestly didn't mind wading in with a pool skimmer in the kiddie pool because where I worked, after you got the chunks, you were allowed to shower off. So you'll get paid to take a shower. What's gross is that I was the only worker who took advantage of that. What? I'm sorry, but if you wade into a poop pool and you don't take advantage of taking a shower, something should be said. Like, that shouldn't even be like, you've got the option to take a shower. It should be, you went into the poop pool. Now you have to take a shower. Story 2. I recently had to put my old dog of 20 years to sleep. I was with her throughout the entire process since she was there for me when I needed her. Pro tip, if you have to put your pup, cat, whatever to sleep, it's best to be there for them since they were there for you. Sure, it's hard and you won't sleep well for a couple nights, but the fact that you were there with them until the very end is going to help mend your heart way better. So for folks who haven't watched our original video on this where we're getting these comments from, we did have one talking about like people who wouldn't be there for their pets, and you absolutely do what's right for you, what you can emotionally handle. But if you're unsure, I can tell you being there for your pet, comforting them in the time when they are going to pass, it gives you peace for them because they're calmer, and I think in the long run, it helps most people. It certainly has helped me in the past. So, yeah.
Story 3. Concerning story 27, I've only ever once not been with a fur baby when she was euthanized. She was in an exploratory surgery due to some very worrisome symptoms. Found out the entire underside of her liver was covered with cancer. I had to give the okay over the phone. I still miss every furred family member I've had to say goodbye to. I still cry over them if I think about it too long. My husband and I would never let one cross the rainbow bridge without us there giving them all the love we have for them. Story 4. Concerning story 26, as someone who worked retail for many years, I can confirm that the nicer you are to employees, the more they're motivated to help you. There are, of course, exceptions if the employees at the end of their rope are just not a great person to begin with, if their manager or supervisor is the kind of jerk with zero tolerance for bending rules, etc., but generally, they don't risk their employment by helping you. They will probably do whatever they can if you're nice to them. Story 5. I totally believe the story about private schools. My parents paid what some people make in a year to send me to the top private school in our province. They had an absolutely abysmal special education program consisting of 1 room and 2 teachers. I was kicked out 2 years later for behavioral concerns and low grades after receiving no help in subjects I struggled in because of a diagnosed learning difference. I spent the rest of my schooling in our local public school and am graduating with honors and have been accepted into my dream college all because of the public schools co-op program. Private schools are elitist hellscapes that very rarely help students succeed. At least where I live, the public system is leagues better, in my opinion. Story 6. I had a parent who worked in a private school. The open secret about private schools kicking out disabled students is true. Though in my parents' school particular case, it wasn't because of elitism, but because they can't afford proper accommodations for severe cases. They can barely afford proper accommodations for even minor cases. All the tuition money is spent renovating the school building to accommodate the constant flood of new students that keeps growing every year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no secret that a lot of these schools that charge a lot of money, that money is going towards, in these private schools, the people who own them. And I mean, hopefully to the teachers and stuff too, but also, renovating the school to make it even more appealing to the elites that can afford it. And I don't know. I have a lot of very mixed feelings, mostly not great towards private schools, but I also am a person who doesn't have all the answers. So I don't know.
Story 7. About the one with the therapists, it's actually pretty common for therapists to have therapists of their own for that exact reason, the job. Story 8. As a former tradesman, I can say that professionalism is taken very seriously. I can also say that sometimes homeowners have some very unrealistic expectations. Most of the time, a supervisor or higher up in the company can talk sense into them and give them something that, while it may not be exactly what they wanted originally, is reasonable to the budget, materials, etc. But sometimes that isn't the case, and it will still get done. It will look beautiful, but some weird things have to be done. Also, the amount of cigarette butts and monster cans hidden in that beautiful retaining wall that you just paid thousands of dollars for is insane. Story 9. As someone who took a light 3D course a long time ago, everyone wants to be a modeler or an animator. So, you're a dime a dozen. The riggers and the VFX code boys are the real rock stars in the class. I'm assuming this also translates to industry, though that's a different department than mine. Story 10. Owner of a coaching school here. Most students who fail a subject don't do their homework or study after school. Of course, they will absolutely get better grades when they're with us for 90 minutes to 3 hours each week for at least half a year. Almost the same could be achieved if they took learning a little more seriously and did the necessary things themselves. Story 11. As someone who works with 3D modeling, I can attest to the fact that the things that impress people the most in animated movies, etc., Pixar, DreamWorks, Disney, and so on, are elements that often are the easiest to do. See those incredible details in the reflections of that animated character's eyes? A simple setting that takes maybe 1 to 5 minutes for the artist to set up. The 3D artist isn't manually calibrating all the reflections and ensuring everything is there, hand-painting things, or anything of that sort. It's literally just a standard material feature in the program and a custom 3D image environment, think 360 image, that is reflected automatically on any material that the 3D artist chooses with the simple click of a button. What actually takes effort, the character rigging, lighting, texture blending, animation, nobody ever talks about those things. Only the shiny stuff gets attention, but the subtle stuff is 100% of the time what took the most effort by far.
Yeah, I've watched enough stuff about, special effects, 3D modeling, all that, even though it's something that I just don't know or really do. But it is always kind of surprising what parts the real work goes into, because for a lot of those really fancy little effects, that's stuff that someone did all the work on to create a plugin so that other people can do it at the snap of a finger, a plugin or a whole tool or app itself. I don't know. People smarter than me can explain it better, but if you're interested in this stuff, go look into it.
Story 12. I work in childcare. Your child already knows all the common swear words, including slurs, and either learned them when they first started interacting with other kids in kindergarten or from adults in their life before kindergarten. Childcare facilities have rules against swearing not because we actually believe we can stop kids from learning swear words, but so when parents complain to us that their child learned how to swear and obviously this is entirely our fault, we can point to the rule that says, "Nuh-uh, wasn't us. We have rules against that." In reality, one strategy we often use is making a bargain with the campers that will look the other way if they swear unless someone above us overhears it. But we then tell them that slurs are outright banned and that we personally can't stand it when people use slurs or are bigoted in any way. It works pretty well. Parents, if you're not going to put parental controls on your internet, then for the love of God, talk to your kids about what sort of content they should be consuming on the internet. Yes, parental controls suck for teens, and restricting your teenager's internet access is a good way to drive a wedge into your relationship, but I've worked with 5-year-olds who have complete unrestricted iPads that they stay up on all night. And I know this because they tell me. It's not good for your kids. The camp counselors you just handed your child over to for the next 2 weeks were probably hungover as F while they were meeting you, doubly so if they were wearing sunglasses. The odds of this go down dramatically if there is a full day between when the previous campers were picked up and when you drop your kids off, because some camps have kids go home one evening and arrive the next morning, which, after cleanup is done, leaves a 12-hour window to get crap-faced during one of 4 nights a summer when the whole camp is off duty, for 2 weeks overnight camps anyway. A lot of camps have problems with staff being intoxicated while on duty. The problem has improved a lot since the 2000s, and some camps are much better than others. I'm legally not allowed to give any more details over social media. On a lighter note, if you've ever sent to camp a glowing email about how much fun your kid had, I can guarantee it got printed out and given to the staff you named, and those staff very much appreciate it. This is especially true if your kid needed one-on-one support. If you credited the whole staff team, it got read aloud at a staff meeting.
We got a lot of stuff going on here, and you know what? I get that about the not swearing. I think I didn't go back and rewatch it, but I think in that video I did my normal ranting about how who cares if kids swear? What's the big deal? But yeah, if you're in a childcare facility, you don't want to get blamed for that. And just a lot of interesting stuff about camp counselors. Just kind of a reminder that they are people and, you know, people have fun and can be fallible, and that's okay.
Story 13. Also, for the luggage thing, partially true. It depends on where and how your bag goes missing. If it didn't turn up at your destination, immediately go to Lost and Found. Do not wait to see if it comes on the next one. It's only when the bag is scanned or next time checked that it can be intercepted to be returned. If your bag is supposed to meet you in Detroit and it's not there, it could be anywhere. Even having gotten stuck on the cart very rarely happens, usually involves handles that don't get put down all the way or bags with stuff attached to them. Can happen. Your bag isn't scanned every day when turned into lost baggage. It's only when someone spots something familiar about it or thinks it might be someone else's. Also, keep receipts for anything worth over $100 you might ever travel with. I make copies and save them to a thumb drive as PDFs, then carry this in my pocket/carry-on. Story 14. As a programmer, I know that most people associate my job with ones and zeros or a black background and a green text and think we use some kind of complicated software to write the code, when in actuality you can write in any coding language just using a notepad. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.